Cattle on the trail, as in the old days, raising a historic cloud of New Mexico dust. A woman on the back roads of the South who has spent every waking hour of every day of every year of her long life trying to make things better for others.
Hello.
Those are the gifts we're sending you tonight. Here are some you sent us. Yes, tonight's the night for the Great American Mailbox Collection.
I have miles and miles ahead of me, tales to listen to, time to spend. Up ahead, the road is bending. Wonder what's around the bend.
On the Road with Charles Kuralt is sponsored in part by IBM.
Wandering across America has its unexpected delights, and one of them is the clotheslines. The clotheslines give spirit and color to the national landscape. We came across clotheslines in the spring that were brighter than the lilacs. Clotheslines that made the tulips pale. Clotheslines that outshone the very cherry trees. You pass through a small town and look into the backyards and ask yourself what it is that's so satisfying here. Of course, it's the clothesline. It completes the scene. If there were no clothesline right there, an artist would paint one in. The people who hang wet wash on the line are not trying to be artistic, of course. They're trying to dry their sheets and shirts and pillowcases. But I ask you, is there not art in these towels of Ohio, blowing bravely under the blue sky, and in these sensuous pastels in the embrace of a light Kentucky breeze? Louisiana still life, red nightshirt and blue overalls. And this offhand American art is not found in the rural places only. Right in the concrete heart of New York, New York, on a sunny Italian festival day in summer, the clotheslines softened the lines of the brick buildings and the iron fire escapes, bringing a little humanity to the big city.
You know the baby came to the feast again Saturday and Sunday?
At a window on Carmine Street, we found Elsie Cardia taking in the washing and talking across the backyards to a neighbor who was taking in the washing. In the city, if anywhere, you'd think the electric clothes dryer would have caught on by now.
No, actually no, because there's no dryer. No matter what they say, they can give you clothes as fresh and nice smelling like the line, the sun, the fresh air.
You've always used a clothesline?
Always.
It's kind of an old-fashioned thing, though, you know.
Well, maybe I'm an old-fashioned girl. I am great.
I notice all your neighbors also hang their clothes out.
Oh, yes. Up there I have my friends. Iris. Hi, Lily. Yeah, they all hang clothes out. Yeah, we have, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see about a dozen lines from this window. Yeah, I guess you're all old-fashioned.
There is not only art in the clotheslines, but also neighborliness, as you can see, and tradition. People who use clotheslines have nothing to hide. They hang their personalities and circumstances out there on the line for the world to see. Here is a woman who does not follow the latest fashions in underwear. Here is another who does. Here is a family which cannot afford to throw away a sweater merely because it has a hole in it, or replace old blue jeans which still have another wearing in them. Here is the home of young athletes. Here is a starstruck girl. Clotheslines lift the spirits like banners at a celebration. They are a reassurance of normality and an act of faith. Anybody who hangs clothes on a line out of doors is saying, well, no matter how bad things get, I can wait. The sun will come out someday.
What's that Fred's getting?
A computer.
What's he know about computers?
They taught him everything he needs to know.
He can't even drive a car. He's going to run a computer?
Yep, they sent him to a special class to learn how.
Hope he did better in theirs than he did in ours.
There's a special phone number he can call if he has any questions.
He'll keep him busy.
And if there's a problem, they'll come right here and fix it.
Right here. Nobody ever comes here. Who was it that gave Fred such a great deal?
IBM.
IBM. IBM. You sure we're talking about the same Fred?
Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. Don't let them pick guitars, drive them old trucks. Let them be doctors, lawyers, and such.
Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. Don Barker is singing the song, but he doesn't believe it. Nobody here believes it. To them, there's no better life in this day and age than the cowboy's life. And amazingly, in this day and age, they are gathered around a campfire 20 miles from Las Lunas, New Mexico, getting ready for a cattle drive.
Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys.
It is 5:30 the next morning, and time to move them out. Buddy Major owns these cattle, and once a year he moves them to the summer grazing land 45 miles away. He doesn't have to do it this way, driving the cattle before him over the range, eating their dust all the way. Most ranchers nowadays ship them by truck. But Buddy Major remembers this boy, because a long time ago, he was this boy.
I remember when my dad used to trail cattle to the railroad at Magdalena and down at Swanee. Well, I started going with him when I was probably 8 years old, and in those days we didn't have any trucks or pickups, and we drove the cattle and took a pack mule and our saddle horses and drove them 50 or 60 miles to the railroad. And I enjoy doing things like this now because it's kind of like the old historical days, and I just like the tradition of it and everything.
Tradition. That's one reason for doing things the old way, but it's not the only reason. Buddy Major's son, Stuart, is straw boss on this cattle drive. He knows that if they shipped the cattle by truck, they'd have to travel a long road, 130 miles.
This way, we're only going about 40, 45 miles, driving them, and while we're on the way, the cattle are gaining weight, too, instead of on the trucks, they'd be losing weight. Just a lot simpler. It might be a little more work, but it's a lot simpler.
In the old days, the cattle didn't wear chemically treated tags in their ears to keep the flies and ticks off. But otherwise, a drive of 2,000 head of cattle hasn't changed much. Some Texas Longhorns, the animals who moseyed along on the first big cattle drives more than 100 years ago, are along on this one, too. The old cattle drives must have looked like this, and sounded and smelled and felt like this. In those days when a steer could be bought for $3 or $4 in Texas and driven north for a big profit in the towns the railroads had reached: Abilene, Wichita, Dodge City. This is 1983, of course, and the trail that Buddy Major rides is not the Chisholm Trail or anything like it. He doesn't have to worry about rustlers or Indians, and his trusty horse is accompanied by his trusty pickup truck, complete with his trusty radio telephone. But the chuck wagon is the real thing. It was bought by Buddy Major's grandfather back in 1910 or thereabouts. It's pulled by 2 of the 4 mules which are along on this drive, and driven by Tony Trujillo, a man who likes working with mules. They may be stubborn, he says, but they're not dumb.
Lots of people, they say, more sure-footed. But I don't think so. They just a little more careful. They won't do nothing to hurt themselves. They might hurt you, but they're not going to hurt themselves.
Buddy Major's grandson, Brandon, is along for the ride. One of these days, he'll be driving cattle, too. Not many young people are choosing careers as cowboys these days. It's not as glamorous as it used to seem. But Buddy Major's younger son, Randall, under the big hat there, never wanted to be anything else. He likes the freedom and the wide open spaces.
You learn a lot. You learn, just a lot of common sense stuff that you ordinarily wouldn't learn if you were somewhere else,
That's right. You learn a lot of things you wouldn't learn somewhere else. How to shoe a horse in the field, for example. It's rocky country out here, and a horse can't get by without shoes. You learn what to do if part of the harness breaks and the dang mules start running away with the chuck wagon. Hang on for dear life is what you do. And you learn about all the fun you can have if the horses get tired of standing around in a rope corral and decide to break out of this place. Oh, there's lots you can learn on the open range. Buddy Major learned it years ago, and he hasn't forgotten. Nobody ever promised that a cowboy's life would be easy.
Put your hot on the fingers.
This drive is only a small reminder of what used to be. The big drives north from Texas ended almost as suddenly as they began. By 1890, the railroads had expanded south, and barbed wire fences were carving up the range. The cattle drives weren't practical anymore. But out here with Buddy Major, there were times you could almost believe it was 100 years ago, and that these were old-time cowboys. You were seeing what they had seen then, and thinking what they had thought. The good times you were going to have in Abilene, if the cattle didn't stampede you into the ground. You thought about some of the songs they'd been singing the night before the drive, songs that were heard in this country a century ago. The Red River Valley is in our American bones. We remember it, even those of us who were never there to ride the dusty trails north and hear the lowing of the cattle at night and the shouting of the cowboys by day. Buddy Major was there, and because he can't let it go, because he remembers it, so do we.
And the wild who has loved you so true.
Why American business trusts Emery.
When an oil rig has to wait for a part, money goes down the drain. I trust Emery's same-day service.
When I send critical lab tests to 10 hospitals overnight, I count on Emery for results.
Funding documents for million-dollar deals across the country doesn't intimidate me. I trust Emery, desk to desk.
Over 1 million customers trust Emery to deliver. Call Emery. We've earned the trust of American business.
Step this way.
No, it's just my keys.
Could you empty all of your keys?
Wait a minute, Sue, do you have the traveler's checks?
No.
No?
I thought you had
I got news for you. I can't find it.
It was your keys.
Yeah, fine. What's the problem?
We've lost our traveler's checks.
You get a refund the American Express machine down the hall.
No,
But they weren't American Express.
Oh, they weren't. What time's your flight?
You know, nobody but American Express can give refunds of traveler's check machines in most major U.S. airports. Don't leave home without them.
If you want to meet the people who make things happen, people who advise and some who vocalize, people setting trends and those at sometimes opposite ends, people who pioneer, and stars you love to hear, you'll meet them weekday mornings with Bill Curtis and Diane Sawyer. Wake up to what's happening on the CBS Morning News.
Coming soon to its proper place, Monday nights on CBS.
Mildred, I have returned.
The all-new AfterMASH.
I ask you to send me a picture of whatever you use to hold your mailbox up. Well, you wouldn't believe the flood of plows and washing machines and old riding mowers that came in. Jack Law of Pearson, Iowa, writes that for 15 years he has used a 1936 Model A John Deere tractor to hold his mailbox up. He says it's become something of a landmark around here. I bet it has. Some people build their mailboxes to look just like their houses. Not content with that, the Kelsos of Brookville, Pennsylvania, Jefferson County, put up the Jefferson County Courthouse itself and use that for a mailbox. I think maybe the Kelsos win in this category. Bill Foose of Quincy, Illinois, has been taking mailbox pictures for years, and he sent us part of his collection. This is an Iowa optimist. He expects more good news than bad news. Here's an Iowa pessimist. Papers go in the stovepipe in this mailbox. Bills go down here in the stove. But I think in the two mailbox category, my favorite might be this one sent by B.B. Rosecrans of Camden, New York. Summer, winter. The snow gets pretty heavy sometimes in Camden, New York. Mrs. Johansson of Jasper, Minnesota, said her husband Kurt built this one in his shop out of machinery that had accumulated around the place. And a lot of them seem to have been born that way. Arizona Roadrunner. Iowa Bug. Louisiana Tin Man, built by Jenny Dowdy's husband from sheet metal from a cotton gin. I like the Tin Man. He must cheer up everybody who passes that way. Here's a motorized mailbox in Illinois. Pedal Power in Missouri. Some mailboxes are just a shade seductive. This one's in Maine. This one's in Florida. Oklahoma Covered Wagon mailbox. California Stagecoach mailbox. Norman Fell even sent instructions for how to build this one. Just get yourself a big block of wood, he said, and cut away everything that doesn't look like a stagecoach. Many a citizen, seized by the same whimsical impulse, has put up an airmail box to go with the regular box. Ivy-covered poles, some of them have, candy-striped. The halls of Star Route, Leonardtown, Maryland, appear to have America's tallest airmail box, put up, they say, by their 16-year-old son. Which brings us at last to the mailbox of Grover Nub Hayes of Route 1, Cherokee, Alabama. People wrote to me and said, you have to come see Nub Hayes' mailbox. So we did. Mr. Hayes lives on a steep hill above Rose Trail Road. Down on the highway, his mailbox just sits there. It's not mounted on anything cute. It just sits there until Mr. Hayes is ready to read his mail. 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. Up Nub Hayes' mailbox goes into the Alabama sky, up to a junction at the top of a pole, and then across Rose Trail Road, ever climbing, with Mr. Hayes himself cranking a crank that used to be part of an old Chevrolet.
I've walked down the hill 40 years to get the mail, so now I'll make the mailbox come to me.
So let's give the Great American Mailbox Prize to Grover Nub Hayes. The mailman merely delivers the mail. Mr. Hayes figured out a way to deliver the mailbox.
McNugget mania sweeps the nation. When McDonald's introduced Chicken McNuggets, they had no idea the nation would respond with a single word. Now McDonald's responds, introducing 2 new sizes, the Big McNugget 9 size and the even bigger 20 McNugget size. Now Chicken McNuggets come in 3 sizes.
We shall eat McNuggets on the beaches. We shall eat them in our homes. We shall eat them at McDonald's.
McNuggets, McDonald's and you.
Holography. IBM is using it to speed you through supermarket lines. Inside this box is the innovative IBM checkout scanner. It uses holography to send out light beams that wrap around almost any package to quickly locate and read the barcode. The code identifies the product to a computer, which has the store's current price list. Holography. Another way IBM puts technology to work for you.
I'd like to tell you a story about a woman who was famous once, a long time ago, and shouldn't be forgotten now. She became famous in this issue of this magazine, Life, for December 3rd, 1951. She wasn't the model on the cover showing off Christmas lingerie. She was inside. On page 134, there began a story by the great photojournalist W. Eugene Smith. He had come to Pineville, South Carolina, to see with his lens the truth of something he'd heard. That in this place on the edge of the hellhole swamp, a place with too little of everything but hardship, there was a remarkable woman working as a nurse and midwife. That woman was Maud Callan. Eugene Smith watched Maud Callan, watched her bring joy to children and comfort to a crying man. Watched the day she gave 810 typhoid shots, and then went on the evening of the same day to sit by the bed of a woman in labor, waiting for a new life to come into the world. In those days, in Berkeley County, South Carolina, the first hands a newborn baby felt probably were Maud Callan's. In the pages of Life, millions of Americans came to know her briefly. That was 32 years ago. What's become of Maud Callan since then? Surely she must have retired by now, or died. Well, no. She's still here, and she's still doing her work.
His retirement is all right, but I don't know anybody who lives so long after he retires. They must just... I don't know what happens to them. They just give up, will themselves to get sick or die.
Maud Callan is 84, and she's not retired. You can't retire from caring. And that's what Maud Callan's been doing for the people of Berkeley County for 60 years, caring for them.
Well, how's it this morning?
Well, I
got a nice dinner for you today.
She doesn't deliver babies anymore. Now she delivers good hot dinners to the people around Pineville who can't cook for themselves, covering 50 miles of territory in a 17-year-old car. She was paid when she was a nurse midwife, most of the time anyway. Now she does her work without pay. She says she works part-time. Part-time to Maud Callan is from early in the morning until the middle of the afternoon.
Well, hello. Huh? Look here, let me see. Can your eyes are not worrying anymore?
No, it's not. No.
You can see pretty good now?
I can see, Miss Callan. I can see good. I can't see very far, but I can see nice.
Maud Callan wasn't just a nurse and a midwife. She didn't just take care of thousands of people in hard times in a poor place. That wouldn't have been enough for her. She also trained other women to do what she was doing.
Oh, it was way below the poverty line. We didn't have anything but the old-fashioned midwives who used to come out to field. Isn't that right?
That's right.
Now, when Maud Callan and the women she taught get together, they talk, of course they talk, about the times they all spent in tar paper shacks, watching and waiting.
Oh, it was so cold, and the house so cold, and no fire. Ooh.
And sometimes no light.
And sometimes no light. No light. Have some kerosene in a bottle and a rag sticky in there. That's the truth.
Gene Smith's pictures showed the truth, and the truth touched America. The Life magazine story brought letters with money to help build a clinic for Pineville. Sharecroppers sent pennies. Others sent much more. The total came to $27,000.
Pretty good.
The clinic is still here and still serving the people here, just as Maud Callan still serves. The clinic has become a senior citizen center with Maud Callan as volunteer guiding spirit. She organizes and supervises and oversees and calls the roll.
Mr. Walter Washington, Miss Matilda Bonaparte.
Mrs. Rosa Grant, Mr. Hilliard Eady, Miss Eva Perry, Miss Louise Grant, Miss Julia Nelson, Miss Ola Wiggins. Have I called everybody's name?
She never could call the names of all the people she's helped. The babies grown into men and women, the men and women grown old, the generations gone. She has cared every day for 60 years, and the caring has kept her strong.
I don't believe I've ever been hungry nor tired in my life. The two of them go together. Hungry nor tired. And I might lie down and get sleep or something like that, but I never am too tired to do something. Good morning. How you feeling?
When we clappers get together, how we gonna enjoy?
The people here remember how it was years ago when they were without doctors and without running water and electricity. Hardly anyone can remember being without Maud Callan. Over washed-out roads at the edge of a swamp, through thousands of creaking doorways, into dark rooms where life was about to begin or end, Maud Callan carried a lantern. But it was never the lantern, really, that brought the light. Not then, not now.
My determination is to live as long as I can and die when I can't help it, to do unto others as I would have them do unto me. And I hope I will live so that my light may shine before men, that they may see my good work and glorify in it.
Maud Callan's light shone through Gene Smith's pictures. He wrote later, "She is the greatest person I have been privileged to know. She is, to me, near the pure ideal of what a life of affirmative contribution can be. She bore near total responsibility for several thousand scattered, swamp-bound, backwoods individuals, nearly all impoverished. They are better off for her care, and I am a better person for her influence." If this sounds like a love letter, it is.
Good night. Bill Moyers will be along in just a couple of minutes, and we'll see you again next week.
All these years I've been a-wandering, just when I think I'm near the end, I always see the road is bending, and I wonder what's around the bend.
On the Road with Charles Kuralt was sponsored in part by IBM.